Hey, Mark here. So before you listen to the episode, I just want you to know that we had a few technical difficulties on this episode, so the audio is not perfect. However, we brought Doug back from our zombie tournament that a lot of y'all loved, so we brought him back to talk about the Dawn of the Dead remake, and it's a wonderful discussion. We had a great time diving into the movie and just discussing why it works, but the audio is not perfect. So we apologize for this, but I really think you're going to enjoy this discussion. So sit back, relax. Sorry about the not great audio, but you're going to love the A+++ content. All right, enjoy. Welcome to Movies, Films, and Flicks. I am Mark Hoffmeyer, and joining me is a man that just got done selling TVs at Best Buy. It's Douglas Bramman. How you doing?
Doing great, man. Doing really well.
So I know you're really terrible at being a husband, but you're great at being a father. Well, actually, that's Jake Weber from Dawn of the Dead. But I love that character, don't you? Like, the more I watch this movie, the more I like Michael. Michael's an interesting dude in this movie, in Dawn of the Dead, the 2004 remake.
Absolutely. Sometimes when you watch a movie, you kind of link the character to being a good guy or a bad guy, and I thought he was probably the best good guy. But I'll be honest, one of my favorite actors. I just got to make sure I'm picking the right guy here.
Let's see. Michael Kelly, CJ?
No, I liked him too. For some reason, hold on. Let me look and make sure. I want to make sure I'm talking about the right person. Ty Burrell.
Oh, yeah.
He was awesome in that movie. And I was like, he was one of my favorite characters as far as watching his interaction with all the other characters. Like, he injected something extra into that movie that really made it much better, in my opinion.
Yeah, the dude, he was super smarmy in that. I mean, he just, but like, he even turns heel but when leaving the door later on. But this is weird because sometimes people turn heel, but there's that scene where they're like, oh, you stay with the door. I'm like, he's just going to leave the door. You're stupid for letting him watch this door. He's going to leave it. So it's like, he is so shifty. Just don't give him a job, Doug. Don't bring him with you. Don't give him a gun. Don't trust him to lock anything. Just let him drink coffee and record his videos and do all that and just do your own thing, right? Like, I think it's their fault for trusting him to hold a door open.
Yeah, I agree. He revealed to them very early on when he met all the survivors what type of person he was. So If you picked that person to be your escape route in case things went bad, yeah, that's kind of on you.
Yeah, right. And there's something refreshing about this, and I don't know how you feel about this, but like in the real world, I like people you just know who they are up front. Because we work with a lot of people. Like, we did Comic-Cons together. You meet some people out there, and the people that you know are just a pain in the butt. They're easier to deal with than the people who are kind of shifty. They're kind of, will they be there? Won't they be there? Like, you know that Steve will never be there. So you're like, okay, I can plan around that. So it's like, I find that, Steve didn't go overboard into like Biff jerkiness. Like, he was just a weird spoiled dude in a mall drinking coffee. He drank what did he drink all of? And the lady had to take Mekhi Phifer had to take the vanilla stuff, the orange.
Yeah, it was something about like the lemon flavored drink because he liked it in his like margaritas, or I forget what drink she said, but yeah, he's like the one friend you have where he's fun to hang out with, but you don't call that guy when you need to move out of an apartment to give you a hand because he's not going to show.
No, never. Nothing big, nothing that you have to trust him on. I would not do that. But I gotta tell you, watching this movie, right? This came out in 2004. I remember I watched it in Texas. It was either San Antonio or Houston. And your memory plays tricks on you, but I feel like I was in a theater with 500 people. Easy. At least. Like, I want to say 1,000, but there's no way it's 1,000 people. But in my head, I see this massive crowd, about, let's say 500 people, which you can fit that in a large theater. They went crazy for this movie. The experience of sitting in the theater watching this film it's probably like a top 10 moment for me in a cinema. And you know what's interesting is I was even more surprised looking back at it. Like, this movie has a 75% tomato meter score, 7.3 on IMDb, 79% audience score on Rotten Tomatoes. Like, this is a movie that was written by James Gunn, directed by Zack Snyder, that audiences and critics like. And that's so weird to me, Doug. That's why, like, I asked that question on Movies, Films, and Flicks Facebook. What do you like about this? And I asked you, what do you like about this? Why is this a good horror remake? This is an outlier in the world of horror remakes. Like, I think I did an average of all the horror remakes. It's like 37%. You can count the best remakes on, a couple hands. I don't know. If you're a real jerk, you could do like, oh, well, there's 11. But, okay. My long question is, what makes Dawn of the Dead a good remake? And what made it popular with critics? And what made it popular with audiences? Like, what? People love this movie.
I think that it was just a fun movie. I mean, like, you're thinking it's a horror genre, so to speak, but there are parts that are scary in that movie, and suspense. They don't know what's around the corner, and there's always a threat, they think. But I just thought it was a fun movie. This is one of my all-time favorite movies. But I got to start with my biggest reason that I thought the movie worked well was the music.
Yes.
That was like one thing when I read your Facebook and I was watching all these things, Hannah. So many people are on the same page that the music that went with this movie was just perfect in every way.
Like, you have Stereophonics, Have a Nice Day in the beginning, like the cheeky gag. Then you have Johnny Cash in a beautiful intro that sets the tone for the film. Richard Cheese covering Down with the Sickness. And then you have Down with the Sickness at the very end. Like, it's just, it captures, and you know what's interesting on the commentary? Zack Snyder, I think I told you this, Zack Snyder, like, everyone hated the music he picked, but then they watched the finished cut, everyone started taking credit for it. So, like, they're funky picks, right? And it just, you know what it is, man? To me, it shows an intelligence in the filmmaking. With the cheeky Have a Nice Day and the Johnny Cash. It shows these people knew what they were doing, if that makes sense to you.
Oh, absolutely. And, one thing that I wanted to make sure I had some notes to reference to make sure I stayed on point and on track with this. This movie, when you talk just about music, just about the music in the movie and it being a good movie, reminded me of Star Wars in a way. And it's going to be hard to make that crossover. But when Star Wars was made, disco was very popular, right? Kind of like at that time and state, all those movies had like a disco sound to it. And George Lucas was like, I'm going to do classical music. And maybe at the time people criticized him and said, I don't know, I don't think this is going to work. But when you watch the finished product of Star Wars, could you imagine what Star Wars would look like if it was disco music playing in the background instead of George Williams, like, just putting together a score so perfect for that film that everyone knows Star Wars. They know the Imperial March. They know all those things because it made those films great. And I really felt like and the opening with Johnny Cash and all of that video footage that they put together was so perfect to set the tone of the entire movie.
I totally agree with you. And I think Zack Snyder's background working on music videos really helped him. Because a lot of people think that making music video, because I worked on them, they're hell. Like, oh gosh, like 20-hour days. You just want to, I retired in like 2013 from music video. 2011, I retired working on those things. But when you shoot a music video, you have 3 minutes to tell a story. You have 3.5 minutes to tell a story. So you have to storyboard. You have to think of what's going to be where's this verse? Where's this chorus? Where's this beat? Where are they going to put their hands down when like when the bass kicks in? You're thinking in terms of molding a story in 3.5 minutes. And this is Snyder's directorial debut with this film. But I think he incorporated his really, and this is before he started Watchmen and just sort of, Leonard Cohen, I think he started going heavy on that. But no, I think his music video background shone through on this. But I also am impressed because music videos have so many quick cuts. But I think this movie holds just long enough. It's not edited into oblivion. So, yeah, no, the music's excellent. I love how I just think he thought it out. That's my long thing. I think he knew what he was doing with this movie. They seemed to have confidence. They went to Canada. They found an abandoned mall. They shot in it. And I think it just turned out really well. It's this weird thing. James Gunn, when he was writing the script for this movie, he was known for the Scooby-Doo films. So he had over 100,000 people saying, tens of thousands of people were saying, don't write this movie. We hate you. He got death threats for writing a remake because he was Scooby-Doo guy. He wasn't Slither guy yet. He wasn't Guardians of the Galaxy got yet. So Ain't It Cool News were pissed off about it. Then Ain't It Cool News finally read the script and they liked it. But this is in the time of all the horror remakes, man. The Ring, all those movies were just pouring into theaters. So you have a remake to Dawn of the Dead, right? And we talked about this on our zombie tournament, which you should definitely listen to. You and I talked about it, Doug, for an hour and 40 minutes. But Dawn of the Dead is just really a thinking person's film. It drains you, it exhausts you, but it's about consumerism. There's a message. It's well acted. It's diverse. It's different. It's almost nihilistic. So you have this critically adored, fan adored classic being remade by the guy who wrote Scooby-Doo in a time of horror remakes. And then this comes out and it works. So this is why I love movies like this. This is an outlier. And I love studying outliers because on average, this probably shouldn't have been a success, right? And so I just dig all the choices they made. And I was reading Roger Ebert's review. I promise Doug will be able to talk soon. I was reading Roger Ebert's review about this, and he hates horror movies. But he loved, and he backed up a point that you said, where it's more of like an action film. It's more of it's not really horror-esque. It's more a focus on the characters. And no characters really do dumb things in this movie if you think about it. They have to go in the parking garage to get the power back on. They send the dog to go get Andy, right? Andy, yeah. Andy's guns to go get him some food so they can get the bullets and drive out of there, which is smart. Now, some people have said that driving after the dog when it ran after, so when Nicole drives after the dog, people are like, that's stupid. But I heard Christina Aguilera was at the premiere of Dawn of the Dead, and she said that was the absolute right thing that she would do. She would do that too. If my cat did that, I'd go after it. I don't care. I'd jump in a car and level zombies. So her going after the dog wasn't even that dumb because they had to go over there anyway to get those bullets. So there's really no super stupid choices except for letting Steve watch the door. But you know what I mean? There's no hello.
Absolutely.
You do have the croquet scene where he has a crowbar and he grabs a croquet stick, but that's more for a gag, right? That's not for this guy's an idiot. And he uses it to murder the zombie, which is a great special on the DVD if you watch it. The mold of that guy's head was perfect. You know, that's played for laughs. And so this movie doesn't have this, the teens being stupid. This is an adult cast led by indie actress Sarah Polley, right? This isn't kids in a film. This is adults acting in a movie written by James Gunn where they do relatively smart things. It's very refreshing, at least to me. That's the way I feel towards it.
Yeah, and you know, most zombie movies, in fact, all of them that I have enjoyed watching, there's always that time period where the characters are trying to figure out how to solve the problem of the zombies. And they either get it through information such as news reports, through trial and error, through, you know, dumb luck. Mm-hmm. If you think of World War Z, when Brad Pitt's trying to figure out how can we beat these things, and he's talking and he sees and observes that some people aren't being attacked, and without taking the time to stop and look around and see what's happening, you don't understand that at the end of the movie. Mm-hmm. And I think that in this, same thing. They're holed up in a mall. You know, they're trying to figure out a solution to the problem. And that's part of the story of most zombie movies, in my opinion, is this figuring out how do we deal with this problem.
Yeah. And there's ABC thinking the smart people rise to the top. And you know what's interesting about this, too, is when Dawn of the Dead hit the theater in, 78, Night of the Living Dead preceded it. So you knew that there were zombies. This is a world that was later taken over by zombies. So everyone in this movie had been living with zombies for some time.
Right.
This one, the attack's immediate. And I do think it's, I know in the beginning, going to a mall, you have the ideas of consumerism, and they had to sweep the mall. That was much in this one, no one was in the mall, but you did have the security guards in there, which maybe helped lock everything up. Because it was the morning, so maybe everything was locked up at night, so there weren't many people in there during the day. But it just seems like the worst spot to be, because there's so many doors. I used to work in a mall, the theater. There's so many doors to get into. Tactically, it's a horrible spot. But I do think Dawn of the Dead is just, every time you walk in a mall now, you want to, run to a mall because it's not. What am I trying to say here? What I'm saying is, a mall is a terrible place, I think, to hole out. But I do love the idea of it. I mean, I think it feels good in this film. I don't know. What do you think? Is a mall a good place to hold out in a zombie attack?
You know, I think
it has shatterproof glass, though.
Yeah. So if they knew ahead of time the scale of the outbreak and the true threat it posed to them, I don't know if they would have made the same decision. But at the time that they made that decision, there was still a lot of chaos. There was still a lot of like, we're really not sure what to do here. We don't know how bad this threat is. We don't even understand it. So we're just going to the mall. Like, it was just somebody came up with that idea and they're like, all right, hey, let's go to the mall. You know, kind of like Shaun of the Dead. Let's go to the Winchester.
Yeah,
so things blow over, you know, and then you don't realize, oh God, this virus spread so fast and there's so many people infected. This was not a good idea. This is not well thought out.
Yeah, and then but we're here, so we might as well try to make it work. And I guess no, you're right. It's and that's stupid of me to say I would have made this decision during a zombie outbreak. And we talked about this during the zombie podcast. Like, I'll stub my toe and I don't know what to do with myself. I run all over the place. So if I have fast zombies chasing me and there's a mall, I guess I'm running into it because, you know, you just got to keep moving, I guess. So, I mean, yeah, that makes sense. But I don't know. I guess I always just harken back to. But okay, one more thing. This one's tough to follow up, right? Because you have Romero's classic, which we've covered on the podcast. Norbert and I got on here and talked about it. And I think, though, I think Gunn and Snyder, I'm all over the place on this movie. I'll focus eventually. But Snyder and Gunn, I think they did a good job not trying to replicate the remake.
Oh, and when we discussed, like, you know, trying to think of things that we thought that people liked about this film, okay, other than there's a zombie outbreak and the survivors are in a mall, it was different than the original. Mm-hmm. I mean, when you talk about the number of survivors that there were, the different characters, you know, there was, you know, no helicopter landing on the top of the roof. So it was a different story. And it's interesting. I think that that's one of the things that made it likable. If it was just a modern carbon copy of Dawn of the Dead, I don't think it would have been as popular because people would have been like, you just remade George Romero's Dawn of the Dead and like, you did nothing more for us. But this movie, they changed things, and you find out, like, in the beginning, like, if you didn't watch the trailer and you didn't have a heads up on it, but you knew that it was a remake, you would sort of be looking for, okay, let's see how this story unfolds. And very quickly, when Vivian comes in as zombie Vivian, and you're still like, oh God, that's not good, and you're like, this is bad. She bites
the husband's neck, yeah.
And she throws her out in the hallway, and she does this like super jump up and sprints down the hall. Immediately, you're like, oh, that's different. That's not, and that wasn't that way in the original Dawn of the Dead. So I think very early the movie establishes the fact that this may be in a very limited scope a remake, but we're going to make this movie completely different for you. And I think that's one of the reasons why people really enjoy this movie is because if you wanted to watch a remake of the original Dawn of the Dead that was a carbon copy of the original movie, why not just watch the original movie?
Absolutely.
This is why this movie is so good, is because it's a different story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, James Gunn said he wanted to have zombies and he wanted to have them all. That was it. And yeah. I do think, for me, my number one reason why I like this film, this remake, is that it stands as a companion piece to Dawn of the Dead. Now, if you think about The Thing, right? And then you have The Thing from Another World. And now people, like, it's basically a companion piece to The Thing from Another World. The Thing, Kurt Russell. Then you have the Evil Dead remake, where, you know, it's not Evil Dead, but it's Evil Dead enough. But then it's different enough, and it goes for it, so it's a good companion. The Fright Night remake, I always talk about. I love how they changed up Peter Vincent, and they brought in David Tennant. And it's different enough to act as a companion, it's a remake, but it's a different movie altogether, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. So, I agree 100% with that.
And you know what, like, in Dawn of the, I kind of take, like, it makes sense that the mall was empty and the security guards had it locked, because no one wants to watch the people clear the mall again. We saw that in Dawn of the Dead, right?
Yeah.
We saw that. So let's create other problems. Let's create power going off. Okay, that seems like a perfectly reasonable problem. Then you have a few jerks in the place, but that gets settled really quickly. No one's coming for rescue. You have a zombie baby. Jeez Louise. So I think it does enough to really act as a companion piece to what Romero made. And so that's why I like it. Because it's not like, you know, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake. People love it, but they're just, it's like, I don't know. If you can't recapture the brutality of those 70s horror films. And so that's why I like that Dawn of the Dead didn't really even try to. Like, you're not going to get away with Texas Chainsaw Massacre, how feral that was. Like, there's no workplace that would allow that anymore. Right. And so it's I think they went in there, they did a good job, they kept it poppy. My wife was watching, she's like, this is a good looking movie. Like, she liked the cinematography. I think she really dig it. And, the jokes with the hallowed ground production design. They brought out like a bunch of 25-cent books for the bookstore. But it just, I think audiences who loved Dawn of the Dead liked it, maybe. And then people who were looking for a good time enjoyed it. So it kind of hit the quadrants, I would say, of what it needed
like
to
you
as a
said,
horror
movie. It was kind of an action movie. So even if you don't like zombies and you don't like the zombie horror, it was a good movie. I mean, it's just one of those things when you get done watching it, usually you go, wow, that was a good movie. That was really good. And you talk about it on the way home. I really liked it when this happened, and that was so cool. And then the ending, you could go on and on about the things that were great about this movie. And it's just one of those movies you watch, and at the end you go, wow, that was a really good movie. George Romero liked it.
Yeah, he didn't like the fast zombies, but I kind of want to talk about that. And we don't need to, people dwell ad nauseum on the fast zombies, but this is the way that, so my wife and I were talking, and this is the way that we were able to justify the fast zombies. The virus just started. So right here, these zombies, they probably still have some motion left in their body. They haven't decomposed yet. So during this film, they can still move quickly because they haven't started completely decomposing yet. That's just a theory. Zombies clearly like this don't exist. But it makes more sense that they're able to run from the beginning to a month later than 6 years later because of decomposition and muscles and tissue can only last so long, right? So I understand the speed because they're fresh. They're just brand new zombies. So, in 1968, that zombie used a brick and it ran. People forget that in Romero's movie, right? Mm-hmm. That first zombie ran and it destroyed a window. But people want to ignore that with their slow zombies, even though Romero created it. And I love Romero though. He's rest in peace, amazing director. But yeah, so that's the way I can get my head around it, is they're fresh. It's a fresh one. 6 months later, it's probably a different story.
Yeah, and I actually am a fan of the sprinting zombies because of, when you think about the original movie and you talked about, when they were in the mall and there were scenes, where they were throwing pies in zombies' faces, and it's those weren't, I guess if you get a herd of 50, they're a threat. But when you're talking about you against one of those slow, shambling zombies, just walk away from it. It's not a threat. But
like in the remake of Night of the Living Dead, just walk away. We can walk around them.
Yeah. Like these ones, you can't do that. And it didn't look like they got tired either. So not like a human that you're oh God, I gotta take a break. These things were just sprinting forever.
No, and also, and this is another thing that I think is interesting too, is I think this movie starts off excellently because you have Sarah Polley, you have the doctor, she gets home, you meet her husband gets wiped off the face of the earth, you have the beautiful overhead bathroom gag where the stunt woman blasts into the shower stall. That's brutal. Then you have the beautiful camera work on the car, she's driving out of the neighborhood, the cars are hitting people are chasing people around, it's chaos. You have the Johnny Cash song, then you meet Ving Rhames, you meet Mekhi Phifer, and Luda, Mekhi Phifer's wife. And what happens, though, is that beginning of the film kicks off so well. It is tension to the extreme. And a lot of movies have a hard time matching that energy, right? You start up here. It's hard to stay up here, and you're not looking at my hands, but just, I don't know, put your hand up in the air. That's where we're starting. It didn't drop, right? It stayed relatively level throughout. And that's an interesting tonal, editing, script, acting. He kept it at a pretty heightened level. Even the montage where they're getting used to the life at the mall. They have Burt Reynolds getting shot. They have people golfing. There's enough gags in the montage to work. You have the characters. It's keeping the energy up was really impressive for me. And I don't know what you think about that or appreciated that.
I did. I actually liked that they set the tone very early in the movie itself. And, you know, when you talk about like that opening scene where Vivian comes in and she bites Anna's boyfriend, husband, and like he smashes his head through the wall, and then she goes out to her car and witnesses the chaos, and she hears him screaming from inside, and he comes out and he's running after her, and he jumps on the hood, he punches the windshield, and when he comes after her, he is sprinting. But then as he's sprinting, he looks to his left, and like you see him run off camera because he just attacked somebody else.
It's a great gag.
So, yeah, and so that movie is just like, it's going to let you know right away that it's going to hit you in the gut, because there's a lot of bad stuff that happened in the first 15 minutes of that movie that make you go, oh God, this is bad. This is really, really bad, folks.
And I think they did a good job of bringing in the cinematographer, Matthew Leonetti. The dude shot Commando, right? He's been around since the 80s, doing Action Jackson, another 48 Hours. He did Angels in the Outfield. Too Fast, Too Furious, beautiful car movie. I love that film. Star Trek films. I mean, this is a guy who he's made a huge name for himself. And so you have a first-time director, and then you have Matthew Leonetti with him working on this kind of widescreen format. So you have this young kid director, you have an experienced cinematographer, you have an edgy writer, and like Sarah Polley they wanted in for the star. No one really knew. Like, if you liked indie movies, you like Sarah Polley. But yeah, once again, it's a well put together movie. They gave him $25 million. They went to Canada, and they did a good job. But I gotta say though, keeping up that energy is tough for me. Like, you remember X-Men Origins?
Yeah.
The opening scene where Wolverine and Sabretooth are just destroying people through hundreds of years worth of wars.
Yep.
That movie starts so high, and you're pumped, but then it just goes downhill, right? You can't keep that energy up. So I don't know, man. It's tough to do it. It's tough to do what they did, but I think I don't know. I think we're just raving about this movie, but I think it deserves it. But I just think another thing that made it so successful is just the way it kept everyone's attention. People, and Ebert said this, he's like, there's some characters who are going to die, right? Some characters you don't care about, but then there's some characters you like. And so you have that long scene where the dad dies and his daughter's there with him. You care for that guy. Then you kind of understand Mekhi Phifer want to raise his child going insane after he goes insane after his kid is born a zombie. It's just, they give enough character moments in this 100-minute movie to kind of make you be invested in the people, which doesn't happen much in horror movies. Most of the time they're fodder, I would say.
Right, like they're getting chased down and killed. Actually, I enjoyed, like you said, the energy level was really high all the way across that film. But every moment there has to be like a lull just for a minute to get everybody so they can catch their breath, so they can recover from what just happened. And I really felt like, if you said, hey, what is something else that people really love about this movie? I'm going to say it's relationships between the characters. Mm-hmm. When you talk about like CJ and Bart, Ving Rhames, Kenneth on the roof with Andy, those guys are all of those actors had their own relationships.
Yeah.
And they built these relationships, and when you see that happen, it makes them more real, and you become vested in them. You care about them. Because if they didn't do any of that, you'd just be like, okay, everybody's dying. Yeah, that guy's dead. Oh, there's the one guy, and he's dead. But because they built relationships between them, I mean, even when you're talking about when CJ and Bart go down because they've run out of power, and they want to get the gas to start up the generator, and Bart's attacked, and CJ has to run away, and he looks back at this guy who he's been working with, and you know they've been together, you know that they're friends. So those character relationships inside the movie makes the audience vested in them. If you put time and effort into those characters, they care more about them when they die.
And I love what you said about Kenneth and Andy. They played chess together, and good night, brother. And he's like, oh man, Kenneth, is this you? I finally get to see you, brother. And then Ving Rhames or Kenneth, when he kills Andy, he's like, sorry about this, brother. Like,
yeah,
they get on brother terms. Like, they become friends, and they're never in the same vicinity together. And you buy that about them. So I mean that really does work. And I don't think many of these people are fodder. I guess they went into this movie, and credit to James Gunn. You watch Slither too, which is a really mean movie. But or Guardians of the Galaxy. I think Gunn works well with many, many, many characters. I think he can make a lot of characters likable. And I think this is like a young James Gunn kind of working his power on this, would you say? And I think Zack Snyder to a certain extent. I mean, 300, Watchmen, Batman, well, say what you want about Batman v Superman, Sucker Punch, a lot of characters in that. And yeah, I think he can bring them to life. So I think this is just all them getting ready to go where they're going to go, if that makes sense. Successfully.
Oh, yeah. And that's the thing you said. They're not fodder. They're not a character that they introduce so that you can watch them get murdered violently and attacked. It's like, here's a person that's surviving the zombie apocalypse and they're close with this other person, and they, if you think about like Andre and Luda, and then he's really vested in her because she's carrying his baby and he wants that baby to come in, and they have that conversation in the bathroom where he tells Kenneth, like, I want that child to have everything I didn't have a chance to have in this world. That's why I'm here. That's why I'm trying to save that baby. And then when Luda dies because she gets shot in the head after she turns and he goes crazy, they all find out that this baby zombie that he was holding, like those characters, if you don't tell that story between them, it's just another person dying in a zombie movie, man.
Yeah. And what's interesting during that bathroom scene with Andre and Kenneth is really skeptical about Andre, but then when Andre's like, hey, I want to give my kid what I couldn't, Kenneth goes, oh, okay.
Oh, yeah.
And Norbert left a comment on this. He also did the Dawn of the Dead original episode, and he wrote, not a bad cast member in this flick. Hit all the notes, hiding a zombie, hiding zombie bites a guy. How long does it take to turn? We learned if you don't get bit and you die, you don't turn. So it's really interesting they covered that in an organic way. Adds a new one. You made what a zombie? The baby. He's like, well-framed shots, the parking lot in the end when the guy picks up the thing and it blows up. And he also Mascajones for choosing the bad ending. And he's like, making this an all-time zombie classic. Dexter on Showtime could have taken a lesson from this. And I love what he said here, right? Will this person become a zombie? No. Okay, cool. It was good, right? You kind of begin to, I don't know, I guess you kind of understand the world, you learn about it organically, and also that ending. We talked about this during the zombie tournament. Yep. It's a punch. People you like die. Everyone dies.
And that's, that's where I think Snyder did such a good job, because he makes you vested in the characters so that when the characters die throughout the movie, you feel that loss. Like, you wanted those people to survive, or you wanted Michael to survive at the end. And, you wanted something good and positive to happen, because in the original, they fly off to the island and they're like, we made it. You guys made it. You made it. And in this one, they go to the island and, they didn't make it.
Zombie Island.
Yeah, Zombie Island. And, I think that when we talked originally, I said, because it was such a bad ending. And you said, oh, I like the ending. And I was like, no, when I say it was a bad ending, it was a bad ending for those characters. It wasn't a bad ending for us, the audience. We loved it. But for those characters, man, to have all that hope and sacrifice and think like, we've got it, we made it, we're on our boat, we're coming into the island, like this is our chance to survive this horrible thing. And then you start to see movement, and then you start to see these things come down the dock, and it's like, oh no.
Yeah. I mean, when was the last time in horror? So I watch a lot of horror movies. I don't know if you do, but when was the last time a horror movie death made you care? Does that make, so when was the last time somebody died in a horror movie and you just felt a punch to the gut? Like,
yeah, I mean, it's like, it was almost like George Martin wrote this, like he was like, oh, you like this character? Let me take care of that for you. You've come to like this character now. No problem. I got something for him too. And it's like, I think that, I don't know what it is about human nature that makes us like that. Like, I love Game of Thrones, and I'm not going to spoil anything, but the person who dies in the first season, who I thought was the main character, was like, you watching it and you're like, you can't do that.
Yeah.
You can't do that. You can't kill all the survivors at the end on an island when they finally made it. But they did.
This movie killed off Michael, who had the arc, and, he and Anna had a good relationship, and he just pushes the boat away. It's a cool shot. And listen, there is fodder, right? Steve isn't going to make it. Yeah. The blonde lady's not going to make it. That Eastwood, Norma, the driver, She's not going to make it. But, man, I was like, when Michael just gets bit and he's like, yeah, I'm just going to stay here and die. You're like, oh, what? Wait, what? This dude's cool. I don't know. It's a weird, it's almost, this sounds weird. Lisa wrote, loved it. The pace, the characters, the zombies. It was fun. This is a film that kind of feels like a Red Bull horror film, but it's also not, but then you care for the characters, but it's paced so quickly. I know we keep saying this. I don't care. If you're listening to this, you probably like Dawn of the Dead. I don't know. I don't know. I think it did a good job. And also, one more thing before we go on break. Dan Allen Sr. wrote, I think because of Snyder's reverence for the Romero classic and his desire to essentially not to remake out of respect to the original Dawn, you get something that's so different that can be enjoyed on its own merit and not constantly compared to the original. Even Romero enjoyed it, and it opened the conversation for him to join up with Universal, who funded his later films. I think Snyder did a great job of capturing the fun campiness of the original, which he does. There's some campiness in it, people getting bonked in the head and stuff like that. Paid proper homage to his film's namesake, but made it different enough that Romero fans could enjoy it without feeling the need to pit it against arguably the most influential zombie film ever made. Which, that's right, like, you can't watch Dawn of the Dead and be like, well, it's no Dawn of the Dead. Well, it wasn't trying to be Dawn of the Dead, if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah, it does. And I'm glad that they didn't do that. I'm glad that they added something to it, because you just because you watch the original, if it followed the original really closely, you would already know what happens during it. There's no oh God, is he going to make it? This is dangerous. Like the scene where they go down in the sewer and they're trying to get back to the mall and those things are just coming down. You're like, oh God, that guy might not make it. He might not make it.
And you like that guy, too. He's getting dragged along headshotting people and doing all that. And so I have a question for you, and I don't know if you're familiar with this, but the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre and then the remake, have you watched both those?
I'm going to say yes, I have. It's been so long that my recollection of them is probably not the best.
Got it. Because, all right, so both Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
It's been remade a few times, right?
Yeah, it has so many remakes. There's prequels and sequels and weird different. There's a main timeline of the timeline. But the original Dawn of the Dead and the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, I don't think they could be made today. Because Texas Chainsaw Massacre is such a feral. It's not as violent as you remember, but it makes you feel gross. It makes you feel sweaty. It makes you just feel nasty. Dawn of the Dead is 2.5 hours. It breathes. It gives you characters room. It's something that I don't see hitting the theaters anymore. And it has a lot to say about consumerism. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake, and sorry, John Levingood, member of this podcast, you know him, Doug. He loves the remake. But for me, I fell asleep in the theater. Because it just felt like a retread of Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but it couldn't be as hardcore. So it's just a movie that exists. Whereas I think this Dawn of the Dead, it didn't try to be Dawn of the Dead. And that's why it's able to exist, and it wasn't boring. Does that make sense? The Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake felt like a remake. Dawn of the Dead remake doesn't really feel like a remake. It just feels like, I guess it is a remake, but you could call it something else. You could call it People in a Mall, and it would be.
It's just like when we said when we talked about zombie tournament, and I talked about how 28 Days Later is the best zombie movie without zombies. Mm-hmm. So this is probably one of the best remakes without being a remake. Does that make sense? Yeah, so we're talking that it's just because it was different, it made it better.
Mm-hmm. It had reverence, like Dan said. It had reverence of the original because it features 3 of the same actors. There's a store in there that's named after one of the actresses. So you have Galen Ross, that was the name of a store. Then you have I can't forget the name. Ken Foree saying like people fornicate and have relationships like that. He was from the original, so it loved it, but it was also its own thing. And I think that's why it's able to exist long after the remake craze, if that makes sense to you.
Yeah.
All right, cool. I agree. So how about this? Let's take a quick break, and then when we come back, we will talk more Dawn of the Dead. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Movies, Films, and Flicks. And I gotta say, one thing we haven't touched on is the production design by Andrew Neskoromny. So they went up to Ontario and they shot this movie in an abandoned shopping mall. But I think they did a really good job. Oh, okay. Did you catch this? Metropolis. Did you catch that?
Yeah, totally.
Zack Snyder, Man of Steel.
Yep.
So he's been pumping Metropolis, Man of Steel stuff since 2004. That made me happy, right? And
yeah.
hallowed grounds. I dig the production design on this movie. I thought they did a really good job. I mean, and also, $25 million is not a lot for a budget.
And it made it back in opening weekend, right?
Yeah, it did.
Yeah, like, so after the weekend was over, where the studio was like, all right, guys, we broke even, so that's good.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, and then once it cleared, so they hit that, and then international, it did pretty well. And so, I mean, even if we add inflation, it probably kicked up from there. So, yeah, I mean, and this is also came out in 2004, so DVDs were still selling. This was a big selling movie because you're a college kid, or, you know, you're our age. It's a rewatchable movie. I was in college then. Never mind. Wait, yeah, I was a senior in college, Florida State. Go Noles, just not this year. We're terrible. But, no, like, I had this DVD. It's good to put on, watch, enjoy. I do think it probably is, I guess, the biggest complaint about this movie. It's probably, who's this movie targeted for? Us, right?
Yeah, it's targeted for us, and I think that I think that if you look at, okay, if you were just going to do straight horror, and that your target audience is people who like horror movies, but if your target audience is horror, action, and, you know, something else that you can mix in there, you're going to reach a larger audience. And I think that the thing that makes this movie fun, you talked about the energy level, it was really an action movie. You know, the original one wasn't so much an action movie, but this really, really was. And I there's just something about human nature that draws us to, like, think about, like, Commando, you know, Arnold Schwarzenegger in Commando. That is a very entertaining movie, and it's got a lot of energy, but it's not a very good movie.
No.
But it's a fun movie because, you know, that's what Arnold did back in the day. So you can go and watch a movie that, like we had a brief discussion, this objectively is not a good movie, but subjectively it's just so much fun to watch.
No, it's a couple things too from Facebook that I want to talk about. Jesse Dio wrote, it had a better cast than it needed, which I kind of love to hear. I would agree. Like, when do horror movies, okay, so nowadays, right, you have Hereditary, or in the 70s, you had The Exorcist and Rosemary's Baby, where you brought in The Omen, Oscar-winning, prestigious, on the rise, kind of sophisticated actors, right? Then you have the 80s, kind of goes into slasher mode. There still is The Fly. There's still certain pedigreed movies. The 90s has that as well. But in 2004, I mean, you had Nicole Kidman and the others. And obviously there's other examples where you're probably yelling at the thing right now. But this could have been, like, they went out of their way to bring in some pretty good actors on this. Like, so when he says better cast than it needed, when Jesse says it, I fully agree. It's weird. I think, but you got to understand though, I think the allure of being in this movie is hey, you want to be in a Romero classic? Like, it's, I don't know, I can kind of understand why it got the cast it did.
I can equate it to Star Wars. Like, if you think about when Star Wars was made, other than Alec Guinness and Peter Cushing, who were the now well-known actors in that? There wasn't any, you know. But when we talk about the prequels and we talk about the movies that came after, now you're starting to see people like saying, hey, man, you don't even have to pay me, but I want to be in this movie because I love Star Wars. So it's kind of like has the same feel towards it. Like, I'm sure that a lot of these actors, you know, when they go around and somebody passes them a script and they see Dawn of the Dead, they're like, I love that movie. I want to be in this movie. So I think sometimes if you have that love for a movie as much as George Romero's classics were loved, like, I would be in any movie Arnold decided to do because, you know, he's been one of my childhood heroes. So I love him, you know, and we talked about zombie movies. If they remade Return of the Living Dead, you don't even got to pay me. I will pay for my hotel, my airfare. I'll just want to be in that movie. You know what I mean? Because I love that. So I think that's what draws some of the better you know, or well-established actors into this because they were probably fans of the original. That's why they did it. I mean, you can always say, well, maybe they got paid a lot of money. Yeah, maybe they did, but sometimes people just want to have fun and be in a movie.
Ving Rhames heard about this script and approached Snyder and said, I'm going to be in this movie.
And that wasn't a question.
Yeah.
It was not a question.
He's like,
I'm going to be in this movie.
I'll bring the meat. So he said, I'm in it. Because they're like, why do you want to be in it? He's like, because I'm going to live. And, in the original Ken Foree, he lives. You think he's going to die, he makes up the ladder at the end. And so, Ving Rhames, imagine that. That'd be perfect, though. You're remaking Dawn of the Dead, and Ving Rhames just, 03, when they're filming it, it's like, hey, I'm going to be in your movie. Cool. See you later. See you in Toronto.
I'm sure that nobody was like, no, sir, we don't really want you. They're like, oh, okay. Yeah, that sounds good to us.
I would be like, Ving Rhames wants to be in this. Like, we're set. All right, cool. Hey, I'll see you in Toronto in 2 months. Peace. I think people came out for that. And also I think the vibe of Sarah Polley in this movie is sewn up the vibe of typical horror characters, right? She's super laid back, kind of like, sarcastic. She kind of fits in with everybody too. She gets 3 kills in the movie. She takes care of business. But it's like, I love her vibe in this movie because it's just this indie vibe, if that makes sense. It's not, it's not like she was excellent actor, but you're not getting like, who's like the hottest person right now. Let's put him in this movie. Or like, let's put this person in because they're, and I'm not saying anything about Paul. I just love her vibe in this. I think that's another reason why it doesn't get old, because she's just such a different presence on screen.
Yeah, I actually, she has one of my favorite interactions in the movie when she's playing Anna and she tells Steve, who's played by Ty Burrell, and he's like, listen, if I turn into one of those things, you have my permission to shoot me. And she's like, oh, don't worry, I'll do that. Absolutely. Yeah. I will shoot you. I will kill you.
And she does.
Yeah. And she does, right? So I love that, like, foreshadowing, but that whole nonchalantly, like, hey, man, listen, if something goes bad, you can shoot me. And she does not like him. So she's like, oh, you can count on that. I will kill you for sure.
I got you. I like her interactions with Michael. I mean, it's I guess just the vibe. And she was the first choice that they wanted for this. So it's just, you could kind of tell what kind of movie they wanted to make with the people they cast.
I think that every once in a while, you have a specific character in a movie or a series or a television show, and whoever is in charge of enlisting actors to play those parts, they just have somebody in mind. Like, they wrote that character based on that person. It's like oh God, I don't know the actor's name. The guy that played Tyrion Lannister on Game of Thrones. He was the only one considered for that role. So whoever's in charge of, like, recruiting or hiring or canvassing for actors to be in your show, like, sometimes you just look at this person and you go, that's the character. That actor has to be in this role. And I just felt like that character that she played in that movie, she just nailed it. She was perfect.
Mm-hmm. No, yeah, I dig it. And it's just, I was looking through the different casting, the movies, the horror movies of 2004, and you had The Grudge. It was a success, right? Good remake. But then you had Van Helsing, Curse, which was a dud. Saw was successful, but wasn't great. Anacondas 2, which was bad. Shaun of the Dead, good movie. AVP, a lot of people didn't love. I loved it. Resident Evil Apocalypse, Blade Trinity, Tremors 4. So it wasn't that strong of a year of horror. So I'd imagine Dawn of the Dead sort of stuck out amongst the crowd. I think now I have a question. You watch a lot of bad horror movies, and then you watch a movie that's pretty good, and you give it a great rating. Like, do you think that could have happened with Dawn of the Dead, or do you think people love it this long because it's that good?
I gotta say that even after all this time, people still love that movie. So I think it just has to be a good movie. I mean, we can always talk about, hey, this came out and it was rated really well when it came out, but it hasn't really stood up well over the test of time. This is one that did. I mean, if you watch it now, if you've never seen it, or even if you have or haven't seen the original, but you watch this movie, I think you still enjoy it. I think it's still a movie that even today stands the test of time, and people go, like we keep repeating, wow, that was a really good movie.
And I don't think are there any moments in this movie that you just take you out of the film? So I adore World War Z, but there's a scene where Jerry's driving along, and at the worst imaginable time, he gets a call. And you're like,
yeah.
Like, I guess I don't think I really felt that with this movie. And I just want to read a comment here from Johnny Numb, who's a frequent guest on the podcast. He wrote, I remembered seeing the trailer before Texas Chainsaw Massacre 03 and being appalled on principle. How dare they? When I finally saw it, I was floored. Gunn's screenplay maintained 2 familiar elements from the original while tweaking certain things. Fast zombies, twitchers, the tricked out shuttle buses, which I love, and the chainsaw bit. Oh, it's so good. I threw that in, not Johnny Numb. And giving us a mix of likable characters and assholes. I think Snyder's overly stylized approach to the proceedings work well as a contrast to Romero's more workman-like manner. Right? Because as much as I love Romero, you look at his shots, you're not thinking that's beautifully framed. It's more about character. Right? It's more about tone. And then, that said, I remember being first in line at a horror con years ago, where someone behind me asked, how did they know which boat belonged to Ty Burrell's Steve? And that question bothers me to this day. How did they know which was his boat? Because there's no beep beep.
Yeah, so, as we know that sometimes movies do that, where there's something inserted in it, whether it was just for flair. And sometimes it can be a director's choice. And I'll give you the perfect example. The scene where Steve leaves them high and dry and they're running up the stairs and they're trying to get the door open and they're pounding on the door and the zombies come around the corner, they're sprinting, and then they just stop. And then they look at them. And there's a moment where it's like, they're no longer running up the stairs. They've stopped their movement, and they're just, because that scene was just so freaking creepy, Mm-hmm. So who knows why that happened, but I agree. Like, I never actually thought about it until I read that comment on your Facebook post, and I was like, he's got a point. Like, how did they know? You could say maybe when the whole idea came up and they were in the mall, he gave them the name of their boat and it was written on the side and they knew it was going to be at that dock, and they were just running down the dock and they're like, oh, there it is. But, it's just one of those small parts of the movie that who knows? Thankfully, it wasn't enough to ruin the movie where you were like, oh, that's so stupid. How would they know that? And it was part of it that you have to go, that's a good question, because I don't know how they know.
Yeah, I think you brought up the 2 points that I kind of not have issues with, but yeah, the boat now because of Johnny Numb. Thanks, Johnny Numb. But yeah, maybe they saw the name of the boat. But then they do wait on the staircase. It does provide a great visual. There's a good shotgun blast. I think what could be good about that moment is it gives you a little bit of time to breathe and be scared, because it changes up the dynamic slightly for a couple seconds, right? So maybe it puts viewers in a different headspace than just a chase scene, right? So
yeah,
I mean, I do like the visual though of him shooting the thing and then it kind of slumps and the zombies have trouble getting around it. That's a neat visual. So the zombies wouldn't do that though. They would just run, correct?
And they would just keep running up the stairs. And, you think of World War Z and how they did the CGI when these things look like waves of water running and turning corners. Like they weren't going to stop and assess what was happening. They would have just kept sprinting. But I think I read somewhere that it was a sort of something that the director wanted to add as a suspense thing, where they were like, he wanted to, and I don't know exactly what his intention was in that point in time, but it was something that was intentionally done to create that sort of anxiety, at the moment, because it was like, what's going to happen? And it gives you that moment to do that before it's then like, boom. And, they can't get the door closed, and then they're running down and they're getting in the elevator and the elevator door's closing and the zombie's getting closer, and thank God it closes.
Yeah.
It leads to the chase.
I think you're right. I think it's a good break, and it gives it a chance to establish the door, to kind of create a little bit of time. It's a good visual of them just waiting there, because you do need that. I guess in every single chase film you can think of, you do need a little bit of a breather to just embrace that. No, I think that makes sense. I see it, and I get why they did it. It just, the problem is, with horror movies, I think the thing that kills it is when you're taken out of it. Does that make sense? When you're...
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I agree. It's like, you want to escape reality and put yourself in that situation. I think that's why people like horror, because It gets your heart racing. You have anxiety for the characters, or they startle you, or, whatever your thing is. And I think, like, I know we said this in the zombie tournament, like, one of the reasons why I like zombie movies so much is when I was a kid, I was so terrified of them. Like, it was just something that I watched it when I was too young, and it just haunted me for the longest time. And I really feel like I wasn't able to, as a kid, understand that that's not real. And I think that in watching the horror movies, you put yourself in the movie. And then when there's that moment where it's like, come on, it kind of takes you out of the movie. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like, you want to always be with those characters, feeling their fear, feeling their anxiety. And as soon as you have that moment where you're like, what? That's ridiculous. That wouldn't happen. And, all that, it kind of takes you. That's why, like, I cannot watch cop movies. I can't watch it.
Yeah.
Because I just, like, I'm like, every time I watch them and there's this, like, 32-car pileup, all I can think about is, damn, that's a horrible accident report. I don't want to handle that. I have to be the guy that responds and has to do that accident report and, take all those statements and get all that vehicle information and put it into the computer. Like, that's how I see them. So that takes me out of the reality of being able to enjoy those cop movies. But when you have moments like that in a horror movie where you're like, come on, like that takes you out of the movie, and it's gonna, I don't say it ruins the experience, but for that moment in time, you're not in the movie anymore. You're not standing next to the character, feeling their anxiety, feeling their fear. You now realize you're sitting in a movie theater watching a movie, and I think that's bad for horror fans to be out of the movie.
That's why I have a very hard time. So I love Bowfinger because it's a movie about a making of a movie, but they don't even act like they're trying to be realistic making the movie. So I can do that. But I spent years of my life on film sets, just watching the minutia of everything. So there's a movie that came out this year, and it's like 92%. People are lauding it. And I don't want to spoil the twist about it, so I'm not going to say what movie it is. But I was watching them, and like the way they're talking on their walkie-talkies, and the way that they're standing in places and there's C-stands that wouldn't be there, and I hate it. I started yelling, like, that wouldn't be there. Like, if you make a movie about making a movie, make it as unbelievable as possible. Don't try to be realistic with it, because you're not. Also, same with tennis. I played tennis my whole life, and there's no way an actor could look like a pro in 3 months of training. So whenever I watch a tennis movie, I'm like, I can't do it. So I feel you. But also, in terms of being referential, right? I was watching a movie the other day called Vampires in Brooklyn, which I love.
Is that with Eddie Murphy?
No, that's Vampire in Brooklyn. Oh, this is Vampire. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry, Vampires vs. the Bronx. Yeah, that's it. Vampires vs. the Bronx. Did I say that?
I think you said something with Brooklyn,
and I was like, it's Vampires vs. the Bronx. I mixed up that because I did an episode recently of Rotten Tomatoes where they did Vampire in Brooklyn, so I had to like analyze everything about it.
Gotcha.
But yeah, Vampires in the Bronx versus the Bronx. They make really nice referential comments to other vampire movies. So the company that's moving into the Bronx is Murnau Properties. Murnau is the guy who directed Nosferatu. So there's no suspense wrecked. You just see it and you smile, right? Mm-hmm. And then you see later on there's they talk about Blade, and then there's a Lost Boys gag. But none of it takes you out of the movie because it's not during a really suspenseful time. And I think sometimes when you watch these movies, they'll make like a referential gag to their prior thing, but it's during a really heightened scene. And you're like, oh, and then that zaps you away from it. And I think Dawn of the Dead does a good job with its references with the names of the stores that you see earlier in the film. It doesn't take you out of it, except for those couple moments. It's another one that I dig. I don't know. Yeah. I don't know. But yeah, that was my long way of saying, once again, they did a good job of.
I think that happens with every profession. I think if you're like a contractor and you're watching a movie and somewhere in that movie it has something to do with contracting and you start noticing mistakes, like where you're like, no, that doesn't happen like that. It's going to happen with every profession. And it just happens that when I watch police movies, I'm always like, I'm either like, it doesn't happen that way, or, that's a horrible accident because you got to do a report. I imagine that like if you're a doctor and you're watching a movie and it has a doctor in it and you see him doing things, you're like, oh, come on, we don't do that. That's ridiculous. So I think that happens with every profession that you're going to see in a movie. and you just have to try to look past it to enjoy the movie.
Yeah, I guess the one good thing about zombie films is there's no zombies. So you can't be like, well, I would do that. Like, and then also, you know what I like too about, in a lot of horror movies nowadays, they have to figure out, oh, there's no self-service. There's no this. There's no that. Dawn of the Dead in 2004, there were cell phones, but it didn't matter if you had a cell phone or not, right? So they didn't even have to worry about cell phones. So I think that is, once again, that kind of adds to the timeless feel of it, where it doesn't matter if you have them or not. They're not going to work. So I don't know. I like that. I think it's going to age well because there's nothing keeping it firmly rooted in 2004. Maybe a couple of the wardrobe choices, but that's about it. But I guess that's another reason why it's probably been able to age well. It's not written with overly stylized 90s dialogue, right? You watch some of those Tarantino knockoffs from the 90s now, whoo, they feel dated.
Yeah.
And so I guess this is another reason why. I mean, it's written in a way, made in a way where nothing's aged too much about it, has it? What is it?
No, I don't think so. I mean, if you think about like the problems that would happen if you were in a zombie apocalypse, I don't think you would, the internet would go down. You wouldn't have cell service. One of my, I love The Walking Dead, but I'll give you a perfect example of when you talk about that takes you out of the fantasy that's on the screen is like, now we're talking years and years down the road and they're still driving vehicles around. Gasoline doesn't stay good that long. So unless you have an oil plant that you're making gasoline from barrels of oil, like there shouldn't be any more cars driving around. But you look past that to get to the story, to enjoy it. But there's certain things sometimes where you're like, you kind of lost me right there. Like, I like the movie up to this point, and like one of my biggest beefs about like the Friday the 13th movies is every time the female runs away from Jason, she trips and falls.
Yeah.
Like, okay, like if it happens once, like okay, but it happens so regularly that you can almost watch any horror movie and there's a moment where the hero or heroine trips and falls running away from the bad guy or something, and you're like,
yeah,
really?
It takes you out of it, right? Another thing I think that brought a lot of people to really makes a lot of people like this movie is there's still a lot of blood, man. I mean, when the husband gets his throat ripped off, when people get their heads blasted off. You have the lady who dies, which is actually a man.
Yeah.
There's a crowbar right through the eye. I mean, you get women chainsawed in half, zombies' legs chainsawed off, heads blown off. I mean, so for a gore hound, you're still gonna like it too. Like it provides just enough. But do you think there's enough gore in this to make people who don't like gore not like it?
I don't know. I don't think there's so much of it that it's like somebody would say, oh, that's too gory. I mean, it's a part of, the furthering the story. If you imagine that if you were a living live thing and something started to eat you while you were still alive, you would scream in pain and there would be a lot of blood. I mean, that's just like, you can't really show it any other way, which is like one of the things, like if you watch World War Z, there's a lot of biting going on, but there's not a lot of gore. Like, people aren't spurting blood everywhere. And so I think that it's not too gory, but it's realistic enough to know that if you're going to sustain an injury, it's going to bleed. I mean, that's just facts. Like, if somebody bites a hole through your flesh, blood is going to come out at some point.
Oh, stupid question for you. Why did Luda not turn so fast when other characters turn... Like, Matt Frewer Frank, he got a nasty bite.
Yeah, so I actually read something, and I don't know if this is true or not. I thought she was scratched by the zombie that came out and ran after her and grabbed her arm. But in one thing I read, it said something about she received a minor bite, and I was like, I don't remember that being a bite. I just remember she had a scratch going down her forearm. And so I don't know if it was something just to kind of further the storyline in the plot that it had to go that route, or, as far as how they envisioned the movie going forward. If you're trying to explain it through science, the only thing that maybe I'm thinking of is a bite would be like a rattlesnake biting into your flesh and injecting venom, or a rattlesnake spitting venom on you, and maybe it might make you sick, and maybe I'm reaching here.
Scratched.
So don't.
I guess she is scratched. She's not bitten. So do you think?
Yes. And who knows, like maybe that infection or whatever turns them just took longer because maybe it had to, the skin is a protective barrier against bad things. So maybe it just wasn't deep enough to like instantly go into the bloodstream. However, this zombie virus works. Maybe it was enough that the infection had to sort of take time to spread to get into the body where it spreads faster.
I guess they did. You're right. They did a good thing though, man, where it's just, why did she last so long? Because she was scratched, not bit.
Okay. They must have thought about it. Right. I mean, that's the only thing I can think of. If they spent enough time to talk about how she was just scratched on the arm and it was a slow process and so somebody was thinking about it when they did it. So.
All right. So we put together kind of, I want to hear your 5 reasons. Maybe we've talked about them already. So if you haven't shared them with me yet, just kind of give them to me real quick if we've already talked about them. But 5 reasons why you think this was a successful remake. I want to know.
So we actually did talk about all 5 of mine. Number 1 was the music.
Yeah.
Meaning I really liked how the music played with the movie in and of itself and how it made scenes better. And, when we related it to Star Wars using classical music instead of disco music, how it just worked. My second one was the fact that it didn't copy the original exactly.
Yeah.
That, you have a zombie outbreak, you have a mall, and survivors in a mall, but other than that, it was its own movie. So that was my second reason why I think that fans and critics liked it. My third reason was running and sprinting zombies, because it was a different take on what Romero envisioned them. And I know we talked about this already, but I just feel like the threat level of the original zombies in Dawn of the Dead, in my opinion, is very low. Mm-hmm. The threat level of the zombies in the remake is very high because you're sprinting, they're violent, they're fast, So that was my third reason why I think. And I know there are some people who didn't like that, didn't like the whole changing it, and they thought they should have been slow and shambling. But you have to admit that when you were watching it, you were more nervous when those zombies around than you were in the original where they just walked past him in the face with pie. So my fourth one was, I think people liked it because of the characters and their relationships. When you talk about the actors themselves, great actors, but the characters that they played were really good characters. Like Michael, he said it, man. He sucked at everything he did in his life except being a dad. And that invested you in Michael. At that moment, everybody went, man, he's such a good guy. I really hope he makes it, And everybody wanted Steve to die. So, because that was the character. That was how he was portrayed, and that's how they wanted to go. And my the fifth and final one, was the ending.
Yeah, so mean.
We've already talked about this, but so many times. But I think that people, when they watch that, I think the ending finishes the movie well because it's such a fun movie and it's horror and you're having fun throughout and you're like, are they going to make it? Are they going to get? Oh God, they made it! Thank God! And then all of a sudden that gets ripped out from underneath you, and you're like, oh, they didn't make it. Shit! Everybody dies.
It's gnarly. And that makes me happy, man. Because, all right, so as Norbert said, it takes cojones, right? It takes to murder off all of your people that you just grew to like, supposedly. I like it. It takes guts. And it doesn't, they're not doing a sequel. They murdered these people off. Oh, I dig it. Yeah, that's in my, you basically nailed all that. And I think I liked Michael a lot when Mekhi Phifer's like, hey, what do you do? What are you, a cop? Are you a special ranger? He's like, I sell TVs at Best Buy. And that made me like the guy. You're like, oh, he's honest. He gets it. But he's trying to be, he's also quite smart. I like when he's dealing with CJ and he knows they need a way to lock up the mall, but he knows CJ won't listen to him. So he has CJ come up with a plan. He's like, that's a great plan, CJ. The guy, I think he's been around thousands of people in his life, so he maybe gets human nature a little bit. And I dug the way he played CJ in that scene. But no, I love this movie. I'm really glad I got to watch it again. I think listening to the commentary was a lot of fun. Just hearing them talk about it, just the way they made the mall work. And I love how they had Mekhi Phifer say shatterproof after the fact, because people are like, why can't they just bust through the windows? So they had him go shatterproof. That's an add-on. But no, I dig it. I think it's a good movie. I'm glad you wanted to talk about it, and no, I'm glad we did. This was fun. So what are we doing next?
Oh, geez, I don't know.
Are you a World War Zer?
I enjoyed the movie,
okay.
But I'm not like the biggest fan of it, and like I think it did a lot of things well, but I also think it did a lot of things that I was like,
Yeah, the cell phone bit or the satellite phone bit.
Yeah, like so there was things that I really liked about it, and then there were other things where I was like,
yeah,
it was okay. It's a different take on zombies. Those zombies were definitely more of a threat than the Dawn of the Dead zombies because they could like climb on each other and go up a wall. So there were some interesting things that they did. But it's I don't know. Like, what do you do any other movies on your podcast other than zombie movies? Because that's all I do. I'm a fan.
I do every single film, but I mean, I'll happily do a zombie series. I've done every. If you look through Movies, Films, and Flicks, our film like our listing, we do everything. So just let me know. I mean, we'll take some time. Think about it. Take a long walk on a beach, man. Think about it. You know. In New York right now, that might be kind of bad.
I'll be honest, I was a little nervous the first podcast we did together. I was just like, I had all these notes, and I was like trying to be so prepared. And then, of course, when we tried to hook up, there was the sound issue, and I was like, oh my God, I'm letting them down. So this time I wanted to make sure I had everything set up, ready to go. And yeah, I love doing this stuff, man. It's a lot of fun.
No, I love it. So appreciate it. So all right, before we get out of here, your favorite moment from Dawn of the Dead?
Oh boy, that's. All right, so it's going to take me a couple seconds to go through the whole movie.
Can I do mine? The Johnny Cash song.
Yeah, that whole
sold me.
Intro to the movie.
Me. I was like, Johnny Cash. Yeah. I love Johnny Cash.
I have to agree with you on that, but I want to pick something that wasn't exactly what you said. I think that when we talked about character driven, I really liked it at the end when CJ blows himself up in the bus, because the whole movie he just wants to make it. You know what I mean? Like, he's the fighter, and then at like one point he's like, figures.
Yeah.
You know, like he has to blow up the tour bus because he's not making it out of there, and he realizes it. Like that was one of my favorite movies. That was one of my favorite parts in the movie.
Yeah.
Because I like the character a lot.
Yeah. And he started off rough, and then he has a good arc.
Yeah.
Good arc.
Yeah, and so I'll go with that.
Nice. I kind of want some coffee now after thinking about it. There's a deleted scene where this guy makes an entire coffee, and I just want some coffee now. So if you watch the deleted scenes, this dude just makes a massive cup, and he's bothering Sarah Polley, which made me happy. But hey, thanks for joining me, Doug. We'll do another zombie movie after this, but I really appreciate you coming back.
Absolutely. Anytime, man.
All right, so for me, Mark Hoffmeyer, and for Doug Bremen, go buy a TV from him. This is Movies Bremen. Wait, hold up. So for me, Mark Hoffmeyer, and for Doug Bremen, this is Movies, Films, and Flicks. We'll see you next week.